Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we got another CW update. We've got a bunch of articles we're going to be breaking down and going through. We got new news in regards to CW and its current programming and how it's going. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV or CW videos later this year. So as we've been doing recently, we've got another CW video in regards to some shows that are currently on air on the network while Superman, Lois and other shows are not on. Obviously this is the off season and this is primarily caused by the strikes, so we know that they're basically putting whatever they can on the network that they've already produced or they bought. So we got three separate articles to break down. One's from Variety, one's from Deadline, and one is from TBI, Television Business International. It's a website that will all be linked in the description below, so you can go ahead and read them if you're interested after you've watched this video. We're going to be breaking them down. They're all CW related. So the first one is from TBI. We're going to break this down. So it begins like this. So the CW in the US is taking big swings as it pushes into more unscripted programming and looks to broaden its scripted output. The network's chief digital officer Ashley Hovane told TBI. And so what's interesting about this is Ashley Hovane is one of the new regime of the CW. Basically, she is the chief digital officer that has been brought in by Nexstar since Nexstar took over the CW over a year ago. So from the offset, you know that she's fully into this idea of what the CW is becoming. And so in an interview, she said this, and this is a quote: "We've definitely added unscripted, so that means documentaries, that means reality shows and everything like that. It could be game shows as well." So she says, "We've gone from a channel that was focused predominantly on a kind of YA and fantasy, aka the Arrowverse, Riverdale, etc. Now we have procedurals, we have comedies. We're getting into this more kind of 4-quadrant broadcasting." And so she also added that the CW are adding thriller and horror shows as it looks to drive depth. We've talked about this before. We know number one for Nexstar is profit, so that means getting cheap programming in, and they can do that by going with dramas and procedurals. It's pretty easy. Also a comedy, they can do, you know, the standard comedy that has been done in Hollywood for a long time. And she talks about how the CW was predominantly focused on YA and fantasy, aka genre shows, so like I said, the Arrowverse and all things related. And I just don't like the way that they talk about it, because she actually goes into it some more here. She says, "We were in the scripted game very seriously," and she says we, as in the CW, right? But she was only brought in when Nexstar was a thing and Nexstar took over, so I don't think she can say we, but yeah, I get what she's saying. So she said, "We were in the scripted game very seriously, and now we want to be a really strong broadcast channel, and that requires more variety." So basically, with all the press they've been putting out, they've just really tried to emphasize the different variety of shows that they're trying to get in, and they say scripted titles such as Superman, Lois and All American Homecoming are remaining on the service, joined by new shows such as light-hearted procedural The Spencer Sisters and comedy Son of a Critch. In unscripted, Hovane highlighted Fboy Island, the former HBO Max show that the CW saved from cancellation, and the upcoming spin-off. They've already gone ahead and greenlighted a spin-off, Fgirl Island, as the types of big swings we're doing on the unscripted side, she says as an example. First things first, I think these shows are very uninteresting. I don't know about you guys, but I just don't have an interest in reality shows, and it's not really a big swing because they're just copies of Love Island, they're copies of shows that have been done before. Like, the formula is cracked down already, so it's so easy for them to produce and do. And I think it's just cheap, honestly. Like, it's a cheap way of programming and adding programs to your network to try and get variety. We're going to talk about Fboy Island a bit later, because one of my other articles basically goes into how it's been doing on the network. So giving an update in terms of like ratings since it first premiered. And so sport has also been doing really good, apparently driving audiences to the CW. And so yeah, that's kind of what this article is talking all about. And it's basically, you know, sort of like a puff piece to try and say, okay, the CW digital chief is really going in on unscripted and broadening the scripted slate and the unscripted slate and everything like that So it's basically saying, okay, like, we're doing this, we hope it works, and even though, you know, the past version of the network clearly worked, clearly had an audience, we aren't really going with that. Like, we get that by now, but yeah, you just keep on seeing lots of these articles out there. But we've got a second article we have to break down. This is from Deadline. It says Fboy Island Season 3 debuts to lukewarm audience on the CW. So that is the aforementioned show that we talked about. It's a reality show like Love Island. I'm sure many of you guys have watched it. That's kind of the original, I guess. Well, I'm sure there was a couple before, but that's the most popular. And so basically the reality format, so this show, which was scooped up by the CW after being cancelled at Max, followed the first 2 seasons and aired to pretty abysmal ratings during prime time. So an average of about 158,000 people tuned in across the 2-hour premiere for season 3 of Fboy Island, which also flatlined with a 0.02 rating among adults 18 to 49, according to the data from, you know, when the show actually came out. It's not exactly a surprise that Fboy Island isn't starting off as a hit for the network, whose parent company Nexstar has repeatedly stressed, and again they're repeatedly stressing all these points, that the average CW viewer is 58 years old, but we've talked about that before. They got that data from looking at the whole network throughout the whole day. They're not looking at prime time. Prime time is clearly between, I guess, teenage years up to about maybe 40 years old max, probably. And so this was partially used as the justification for cancelling nearly all of its young adult focused scripted series last year. I think it's really good that Deadline points this out just in the middle of nowhere, because they did use it as a justification for cancelling Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, all those other shows that got cancelled, like Sabrina. And so I think this whole idea of them going and saying to the press, okay, the average CW viewer is 58 years old, but then go ahead and like go full in on unscripted and going full in on Fboy Island and the spin-off F-Girl Island, like, it just doesn't make sense, right? They clearly had some ideas at first. They're like, okay, how can we attract an audience? How can we try and get profitability out the CW, this thing that we've picked up? And obviously it wasn't making a bunch of money before because obviously they didn't have the Netflix deals anymore. But how can we make the most out of this? Well, they think, okay, let's cancel these scripted shows, these genre shows that have been on the network, and that's the core of the network. And they're like, okay, we're going to save a bunch of money by canceling them and bringing in very cheap content. But at the same time, and we've talked about this many times, they've not thought about the audience. They're not going to get a good audience, especially straight away. But I also don't think in the long term the CW is going to change into a different network. People know what the CW is, and this is not the CW that we're seeing right now. This is not traditional CW. So I just don't see how they think they're going to get a bigger audience for some of these shows. I understand sports, people want to watch sports and they will go to any length to watch sport. But I don't think people are going to go to such lengths to watch Fboy Island or something like that. So I think it's definitely a big swing for them, and I think they're contradicting themselves by saying, okay, our main audience is like 50-year-olds, right? And then they go and make a show for teenagers or 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds. Like, it just doesn't make sense in terms of what they're actually trying to do on the network. And so I like that Deadline actually points that out. So that's the update in terms of one of the shows that the CW has been really bigging up. Like, they're saying, okay, this is a big deal, like, actually listen to this, guys, because this show could be something special. But no, it's literally not performing well, and it's the same, it's a copy of another show. So yeah, sorry for the ranting, but let's move on to the final article, because we got one final big hit in terms of CW veterans leaving the network. We've got Brian Doherty. He is the CW ad sales agent, I guess, and apparently he was instrumental in developing ties between Madison Avenue and series such as Arrow and Gossip Girl. And so he is leaving the network finally, just like a whole bunch of the other people that have left over the last year or so since Nexstar took over. And so yeah, he's only the latest in this parade of TV sales veterans who've exited the CW because of the changes that are obviously going on. Clearly in the article, they're not going to say his exact reasoning, but you can infer with all these major people leaving and Nexstar bringing in all these new people, clearly those who worked so passionately on some of the other shows since, you know, it became the CW. Once it was Warner Brothers, in the past it was the WB. So this is someone that's worked there for such a long time and clearly just didn't like the way that it was actually going, and so this is not surprising at all. But that's the latest in terms of the updates. So thank you guys so much for watching. That pretty much does it for this video. This has been a CW centric video. I know we haven't talked too much about the Arrowverse or DC in general, but like I said before, we're doing lots of videos on the CW too, because I'm going to update you guys about what's going on there. Is it going downhill? Is it going uphill? Well, right now it doesn't look like it's going anywhere that's going to be good for the network, but that's pretty much the update. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. It would really help out. Also subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. But for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see red.